Hey everybody, Graham here from therecordingrevolution.com, and today I've got a tutorial on how to bring some life to your guitar amp simulators. I'm not sure if you're recording through an amp simulator box or an amp simulation plugin, but I know from my experience, as good as guitar amp simulators can be, sometimes when it comes to the mix, they don't quite sit in the mix where I want them to. And they can be a little fizzy on the top end, but a lot of times they get lost in the mid-range where most of the guitar action is happening. Now, some amp sims are definitely better than others, but sometimes it's just the wrong patch, or maybe the tone just doesn't work now in context with the rest of the mix. Here's something I like to do to help get guitar amp simulated tones to fit in the mix. And here's a track I was working on recently where it's pretty obvious to me that the guitars were run through an amp simulator, and one guitar in particular just isn't working. Take a listen to a chorus and you can hear all the different guitars going on. I'll break them down and then show you the problem and two ways to fix it. Right? Couple acoustics, some other guitar parts, and some overdrive. So here's the problem I have. The acoustics sound great, the lead sounds great, but there's two overdriven guitars. By themselves, they're okay. The one on the left is fine. I'll put it in the middle for you. It's very overdriven, but it's nice and mid-rangey. The one on the right is my problem guitar. It's just pretty lifeless. It's very low, mid, heavy, and just lifeless. So one thing that I love to do is I really try to overemphasize the mid-range and give it a little bit more distortion and aggression. So I'm overcompensating for how bad the tone is, and I'm trying to turn it into something else entirely, which is accentuate the mid-range so it can pop out. Because in the mix, it disappears, okay? So here's what I've got. I've got a plugin called fuzz in Pro Tools. And don't worry, you non-Pro Tools users, I'm going to show you how to do this without Pro Tools plugins. And this is a plugin that allows you to add fuzz and a wah, hence the name fuzz. And so it's got a distortion button. You can dial in some fuzzy type distortion or not. And then it basically is a wah pedal that you can move to be open or all the way closed or somewhere in between, which, as if you've ever experienced a wah pedal, it affects the frequency range and it makes a cool sound. So I'm making it like a static wah pedal. So here's the guitar part, and here's what I've done when I add some fuzz and a wah. Take a listen in solo. Right? I'm totally changing the sound. Now, it by itself, it might sound yucky, maybe to you, but this is a really helpful tool because in the mix, it's going to bring out this guitar part. I've made it very mid-rangey because of where the wah pedal is, and I've added some grit because of the drive. And what that does is makes this guitar go from invisible in the mix to visible in a subtle way when everything else is in, and it's going to allow you to have that overdriven guitar on the left and the right be balanced. So take a listen. Here's both the guitars Here and the acoustic. Well, here are all the guitars. And what I'm going to do is press play, and you'll be able to hear. And when I bypass the fuzz wah, you'll hear the right overdriven guitar disappear. Kind of disappears. So what you're trying to do when you're mixing guitars is give everything a place. And these overdriven guitars on the left and the right are trying to fill out a certain tone, and they sound different, the two of them, but the one on the left was at least doing something, and the one on the right was not. So here's just the overdriven guitars before and after. So that overly mid-rangey tone is going to be great for you a lot of times in the mix. By itself, it sounds weak, but when you need an overdriven guitar to be at least slightly present and just to fill out the stereo field, that's what you need, is that overly mid-rangey distorted tone, and it sounds more lifelike than a flat, amp sim tone that we had before. So here's how you do this if you don't have a fuzz wah plugin in Pro Tools, or you're using an old version of Pro Tools, like 6 or 7 that doesn't have this plugin. Just grab a 7-band EQ and some kind of distortion, lo-fi plugin. So in Pro Tools, there's a lo-fi thing that just adds a little bit of grit. So here's this same guitar. Added some grit. That gives it a little bit of life, but then I've also got a 5-band EQ where I've done a high pass, a low pass, and a major boost at 1K. So you can hear this cut on. Nothing. Right? So you get the same kind of effect. But if I take them off, just lifeless. Bring them back. All right, so if you weren't listening to that in decent speakers or maybe headphones, maybe it was hard to notice the difference. So if you have a chance, throw on some studio headphones or listen to this in your studio on some monitors. Obviously, it's a subtle thing. Obviously, this one guitar part is not the end-all, be-all of this song. It's just one part of the puzzle, and it's just playing a small role, but it's the one guitar part that was just lacking. And I had one decent overdrive in the left and just a bad overdrive in the right. And if you can't go back and re-record it and fix it, you could either just get rid of it, or if you really still wanted an overdriven guitar in the right, which I did, I just used a mid-range heavy, slightly overdriven effect on top of the overdrive, and it got rid of the highs, it got rid of a lot of the lows, and it just let this guitar poke out in the middle, which gives it at least some purpose and brings that guitar tone a little bit to life, so it's not hiding in its lifeless, flat state. So try that the next time you're mixing and you're stuck on one amp simulator guitar. That might be all you need, a little bit of overdrive and a little bit of mid-range boost. Hope that helps. Again, this is Graham at therecordingrevolution.com. Thanks for watching the video, and I hope to see you next week on another one. Take care.